All right, welcome back. On today's episode of Bootstrapping to Billions, it's going to be a teach, train, equipped on the great pivot. What it is, why it matters, and how you can get ahead of the curve, regardless of where you fall right now. If you're a business owner, if you're working inside of somebody's business as an employee, or if you're an investor in businesses, today's episode is going to matter to you. This is a moment in time where things are shifting, and this is an opportunity to be able to get ahead of the curve so you don't get left behind. Stick with us to the end. Bootstrapping to Billions. All right, welcome back. So what is the great pivot? In today's episode, we want to drive into it. We're going to touch on some data points. I want to create and craft the narrative first. You're going to hear us talking about the great pivot a lot coming up. It's something that we think is definitively happening without a doubt right now. If I rewind to my background for those of you who are new here, back in 2016, I launched Connecticut's first AI Accelerator. We partnered with IBM at the time, and we were building with Watson, which was like the AI of the time. I mean, this is a decade ago. And we were trying to build the first AI business advisor for an economic development organization I was running called Help Grow USA. We had touched about 30,000 small businesses as we were trying to build this. And the thing that we came up against then was crafting a narrative to get business owners to know about AI and to position how it could help their business. Well, fast forward 10 years later, a decade plus later now, we're on the other side of the table. AI is a very, very, very real thing. It is happening, whether we want to accept it or not, and it is moving lightning fast right now. And what we are realizing is in this shift, a pivot is taking place. Businesses are becoming AI native, or they're not. And the old way of doing business, the old promises that we were told in terms of building a business or being an employee in somebody's company, what we're realizing is that this AI economy is just built different. The pivot is this change. And it's the fact that what has been no longer is, and we need to shift or pivot into what the future is likely going to be. We want to help facilitate folks. You're either going to realize the fact that you've been building something in terms of a business, you intended it to be valuable, you were a founder building revenue and you were hustling hard and you wanted it to turn into value. Or maybe you were an employee and you were working inside of one of these businesses and you're hoping that your expertise and your loyalty would be protected for a period of time. The reality is what we thought was foundational, like good hard work and just doing good work, just really is not being rewarded in this moment of time, right? The reality is you need to change. And the great pivot is really that change taking place. It's changing the way that we work. It's changing how we work. It's changing the leverage in which we can create. And it's changing who's getting left behind in it. Right now, we're realizing that labor alone is just no longer enough. The new economy is going to reward those who create transferable value. They're going to be rewarding those who can be able to document proven profitable systems, because AI enablement and leverage achieved through AI is the way in which the world is trending. And the goal at the end of the day is to continue to build long-term equity. But in this AI-enabled economy, what the definition of long-term equity is also shifting underneath our feet. All right, we want to take a quick break from today's pod to shout out our sponsor, Go HighLevel. I had the opportunity of hanging out with the founders a couple of weeks ago. They're really cool guys, but they're building an even cooler platform. Platforms and tools may help you do the work, but HighLevel helps you build the business. HighLevel is an AI-powered business operating system that serves as the foundation your business can run on. This is where your customers' conversations, workflows, and decisions all come together, and where AI actively moves things forward. It follows up automatically, prioritizes leads, books appointments, updates pipelines, and keeps everything in motion so you don't have to. You're not bouncing between systems or manually stitching together processes. You're building on a single operating layer, something that learns your business over time and helps you run it better. This isn't just a place to get work done. It's where you build a better business. If you're ready to build something smarter, start your 30-day free trial through the link in the description. Check out gohighlevel.com, link in the description, 30-day free trial. Now back to today's pod. So the goal is to be able to get ahead of this pivot so you don't get left behind, because the reality is this is happening right now, right? 22% of today's jobs will be disrupted by 2030. That's 92 million displaced folks and 170 million potential new roles created. The question is, what are those roles going to be? We have a thesis at bootstrapper.ai, and we definitely want to be ahead of the curve in terms of helping create what this future of work looks like. Right? We're finding ourselves literally doing it in real time, living this, and it is a very real thing. Inclusive in that, 59 out of 100 workers who are currently in the market today are going to need to be retrained, tooled, repositioned as the market kind of recalibrates and we figure out what the future of work is going to be, right? 58% of small businesses are currently using generative AI as of 2025, which is up 40% from 2024. So you can already see the change in terms of how fast this adoption is happening. This isn't the same as the .com era. This isn't the same as from yellow pages to web pages. And the shift in terms of adoption is not the same. We're seeing that this time is being compressed dramatically. So you do not want to get left behind. You want to be aware of where the curve is. And then ideally you want to be positioned with partners that can help you stay ahead of it, because 36.2 million small businesses, which are currently the number of businesses that are being recorded. All of these data sources are from the World Economic Forum, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the Small Business Administration Office of Advocacy in terms of sources of this sheet. So, we're trying to pull from credible sources, but 36.2 million small businesses need to go into a different direction. That is the definition of the great pivot. We're talking about a divide that is taking place in this era. The AI economy is going to sink in and seep in and create the deepest divide that we potentially have ever seen in the history of the world in terms of haves and have-nots. We're going to see folks who are not employed. We're going to see folks who are unemployable. We're going to see folks who are tech savvy. We're going to see folks who are non-tech savvy. We're going to see a divide between folks who are ownership rich and ownership poor. And we're going to see a dialogue and a narrative across the board of folks as this is continuing to emerge that may classify this in different, some folks will just simply set this up as asset rich or asset poor, or the folks who are going to be the overclass and the underclass. But the reality is like this shift of what's happening is changing the leverage of the game. And you're either playing with leverage and the leverage is working in your favor, or you're not. And in these moments of time, like this is when the tide goes out and you don't want to be the one that's left, naked, essentially, right? Without a bathing suit. So ownership poor, you're being forced to re-earn value over and over and over and over and over and over again. You're lacking the systems, you're lacking the assets, you're lacking the repeatable infrastructure. You don't have the leverage. It's like your life is just going to be constantly pushing the boulder up the hill over and over and over until you get so tired that you just stop, and then it falls backwards and crushes you because it's so overwhelming, which is how this is likely going to feel for a lot of folks. And then you have the concept of ownership rich, which is moving into a position where you can really see value compounding for you, where you own systems. And because you own systems, the AI can create leverage within these systems, and ideally it's durable leverage. There's a question mark in terms of how durable, because the price of compute is an asterisk, and there's also a real reality that even if you're owning assets in the form of systematized, durable, transferable businesses, built with strong relationships and great operations, there's a good chance that there's an argument that even if you have that, you still, don't own the compute or the models or the data infrastructure, and their costs could, end up, creeping on you. But I would much rather have that than not have that. And if right now that's the world in which we're talking about, 36.2 million small businesses, haves and have-nots, it's ownership rich versus ownership poor. This is the moment in time to go and claim ownership. And claiming ownership is really building transferable assets, valuable assets, ownable assets. In order to get to where we want to be, which is ownership rich, we absolutely need to acknowledge where we are right now, right? Everything starts somewhere. So first you need to locate your starting point, and then you need to navigate to where you ultimately want to land on this curve. So we have folks who are currently employees in businesses and they may be safe, right? So there's definitely going to be a definition of what a safe employee is. Somebody who's going to have a job and then be able to keep a job, and it's a defensible job, which again, the question mark of what defensible even looks like in terms of this great pivot, especially as you start to go 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, as you start to play it out over a long period of time, that question mark becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and the fog of war becomes more and more and more. But there is a real reality that like not everybody is going to get displaced. Like that's definitely not the case. And it's also the case that in typically these moments of time of like great innovation and change, yes, some jobs are lost, but there's also, if history repeats itself, the very real reality that a lot of new jobs are being created, which if, we were to think about the end of this conversation today, one of the things in which we are absolutely obsessed over right now is what these new jobs look like. And we want to be great job creators in this new AI economy. If I was to think about how, what would be a really purposeful life lived, and how can we take all of the skills, abilities, and traits and resources and assets that we've been able to build ourselves over the past 15 plus years of quite literally doing this stuff. Yes, we have Ownable and we have all the different brands and we have the IP and we have the infrastructure and we have access to the capital partners and the exit marketplace and all of these things. But in this moment of time of change, right, a lot of what we have has been built for this old economy. And we're also literally living in this moment of like, what does new look like and where do we need to go and what do we need to position to and where's our part in this great pivot? Right. So this is a very real thing, that a narrative that we're not just sharing here, but we're also speaking through and trying to navigate for ourselves. And we've been fortunate because again, I helped launch Connecticut's first AI accelerator in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 2016, 2015, 2016, we did that deal. So I've been able to think and see this for an extended period of time. I've had talk about being ahead of the curve type of thing, and an opportunity to be able to be ahead of a curve before you fall behind the curve. Like we've been trying to push this and be aware of this for a long period of time, just on a subconscious level, cognitive awareness to be able to problem solve and figure things out through. And then the conversations that we've been able to have and the folks, the thought leaders that we've been able to speak to. And then at the end of the day, the reality is we've also just sunk in and just lived in what the definition of an ownable asset is for so long. I mean, if you follow along with the channel or you follow our content or our story with Blue Collar Capital or Bootstrapper Capital and the types of businesses that we just excel in and what we've been obsessed over in terms of this ownable methodology and how you build a valuable, durable, transferable asset, I think a lot of that is going to continue to apply forward, but we're also at this moment in time pressure testing our theses, and we're trying to determine, as we try to stay ahead of this curve, what's going to change within it. Right? So you got to look at yourself and you got to say, all right, where do you fall right now? Yes, you may be a safe employee. We don't know what the definition of that is right now, but there's ways that we could potentially, through frameworks, pressure test that. You may be a displaced employee. There's a really good chance that if you're going to be a displaced employee, you probably kind of know it. The writing's already somewhat on the wall. I don't want to, this is hopefully going to be, somewhat evergreen content to a certain extent. So I don't want to reference timely news that's happening. But, we're already seeing it happen with large corporations that are downsizing dramatically, like 50% layoffs, and they're citing and sourcing AI as the reason. Right? That's not happenstance. Like we're in this great pivot. It's happening. There's a good chance that you could create connectivity as to whether or not you're going to be one of those. Right? Then you have the SMB safe. And these are going to be businesses that are going to continue to be durable businesses in this AI economy, which again, when you future cast far, far, far out, it's harder to know what that's going to look like, right? If you go back 50 years ago, it was easier probabilistically to determine, present value of future cash flow in a sense of certain businesses, because the concept of this innovative disruption, it wasn't as existential as it is right now. Go back 20 years, highly predictable, right? Right now, we're seeing just models and valuations And the way that the world is shifting and pivoting in this great pivot for the AI economy, like things are definitely changing. But the reality is again, within the next 10, definitely higher probability 5 years, we could define what an AI safe business is. And we're not talking corporate here, right? This is not an enterprise conversation. This is a conversation for us. This is a conversation for our demographic, our audience. Our audience are mostly employees at businesses because you're building something on the side as an investorpreneur. You're getting somebody to pay you to get experience and take all that experience, some of that pay, and build an asset on the side until you can, level up into your owned assets. And we're highly just focused on SMBs, bootstrapped businesses for the most part. Vast majority of the market is bootstrapped SMBs. And we're building profitable businesses, durable businesses that are ideally transferable and valuable. And they could either be multi-generational, or ideally at some point we're achieving operational optionality, which is like the ability to exit your business while still owning your business, or we're selling our business and we're exiting it for these life-changing potential moments of time. But that's our audience here. So you're either an employee and you're safe, or you're not, or you're a business owner or you're safe, where there's a real reality that like for 8-9 million business owners right now, including businesses in our existing portfolio, which is why this is, again, very, very, very close to home. We are like literally living through this because I'm looking at our existing portfolio. I'm trying to make these good timely decisions. An S&P that's going to be displaced and replaced by AI, right? It's just a real reality. So you're trying to figure out, where you're at. A safe employee, you feel stable today, but you potentially run the risk of having false sense of security. You don't necessarily know what's happening or where things are going to go, right? So you may be safe right now, but you're not really building any ownership in tomorrow. And there is no real sense of true, again, this old guard, right? This old way of doing things, this old promise that if you were an employee with great expertise and loyalty, you're protected. It's just not really the case anymore. And we're seeing that. Right? A displaced employee, the pain is already kind of visible. Like you're seeing the cracks in the cog, right? The old role is just shrinking, right? Your risk is drifting into this endless learning without a path to really finding leverage. And you don't really know what to do. And the real reality is you are probably the first mover in terms of what this new economy and these new jobs and these new roles are. So you probably, even though you're at a disadvantage now, there's a really real reality you may be at a disadvantage now. Same goes for the displaced SMB. Even though you may be at a disadvantage now, you really have the reason to be kind of a first mover into the where things are going to go. And again, if you look at pattern recognition, which pattern recognition is primary, the primary thing of predictability of future success is the ability to recognize profitable patterns over time. Pattern recognition, folks that were first movers into in these moments of time of shift, claimed a lot of the upside reward from the leverage that was created through the innovation. So this may actually be a very positive thing if you embrace it and you act upon it and you shift your perspective. Because you change your perspective, you can change your approach. And again, what we want to be able to do is help folks acknowledge and then change perspective, but then also offer a vehicle in which you can actually act on changing your approach. Right? From a business perspective, you got SMB safe, which again, Atlas shrug, who knows? You still have revenue, but your business depends on your memory, your hustle, right? Undocumented workflows. Your safety in that situation is only temporary. The moment you start to get documented, the moment you start to get transferable, the moment you really start to focus on durability and transferability is the moment in which you find value, right? In an owned asset. So not just because you're going to be safe in this shift of the great pivot and you may not be wiped out by AI, doesn't mean that you own an asset yet. So you still have work to do. There's still a job to be done there. And there's an even more of a job to go through this transformation of becoming AI native, because if you don't, you will get left behind. And even if you're in a safe industry or a safe sector, you may find yourself obsolete, right? But then you have SMB displaced, which is the market's already speaking to you. You already know the margin pressures there. And there's a really good chance like what you are currently doing in terms of servicing the market to make money today is just no longer possible. An example of this would be like past precedent, recent times, COVID, and you're selling, a food, or you're doing local, like in real life events, and no longer an option. You had to pivot. You had to pivot, right? Great example in terms of like kind of marketed, kind of example adjacent in terms of recent history and moment in time. So like folks actually really realize how big of a consequence this could be. That's what's happening. There's businesses that quite literally just will not exist anymore because AI will be able to do with $6 of compute what you're currently charging six figures for in terms of your business. So safe is no longer the goal. The goal is not to play it safe in this moment in time. The goal is no longer to just run your business and try to make it as profitable as possible for as long as period of time as possible. Your goal is no longer to just stay employed, right? Surviving is not winning in this moment in time. Safety without systems is fragile. The goal is no longer to simply just remain safe. What the goal is now is ownership, because we're going to move into this world of kind of haves and have nots, and the leverage, right, that we're going to experience and people will experience is just going to become more and more and more and more, which means folks that have will have more and more and more and more because they're experiencing the uplift of the leverage of ownership, and those that do not will get caught. And you're either going to get caught and stay stagnant as other people are growing and the gaps gets bigger, or you're going to get caught and fall behind, right? Because things are going to become more expensive. There's going to be less discretionary income if people are losing their jobs, which means folks will be spending less. So you see an economic downturn. There's all these other components that also, play into the factors here as well in part of this conversation, right? So how workers build leverage matters, right? And employees and displaced workers may stop relying on wages and random retraining. And you got to start building relevance inside the value that you're creating with systems. In the age, in the AI economy, what's going to happen is we're all going to become essentially system operators or system owners. And you need the AI to be able to create leverage for you within the systems that work, right? So you need to be able to become valuable in helping a business be able to adapt, implement, document, and then grow through this new mechanism, right? Because it's a tool at the end of the day. AI is a tool just like any other tool, right? So if you watch this channel, then you already know that we are absolutely obsessed with building ownable businesses. In fact, we have the book coming out on March 27th that is ownable. It's a 707-page masterpiece and quite literally how to manufacture an ownable business, building wedge equity in the process, increasing the value of your business. The reality, though, is in this new AI economy, how you build an ownable business from a perspective sake is going to be different. And it's important for business owners to know this. You're not necessarily focused on revenue in this new AI economy. What you're really trying to focus on is building resilience into your business, right? Because revenue today is short term. Building resilience today is going to keep you in business for the long term, right? So you must be focusing on becoming AI proof as you're becoming an ownable business. And the core of it stays the same, right? So at its core, it's about building or removing founder dependency, right? You don't want to have key man, key person risk in your business, right? You want to have operational optionality in your business, right? You want to build repeatable, deliverable processes that create value in your business that are documented and can be delegated or automated away and tracked with right targets on a consistent cadence of accountability. You want to be prepared, for being capital ready, right? Because you're always exit ready. All of the core things in terms of, building an ownable business, all the same. The only shift becomes this concept of long-term resilience. So when we look at how this transformation can be supported, we're looking at the bridge between the divide. And when we look at the bridge between the divide, we look at this industry and this profession that is long-term equity management. Because long-term equity management is right at the heart of building resilience. It is quite literally the definition of building an ownable, durable asset that is designed to be able to survive against these types of moments in time, right? Long-term equity management is a discipline, and it's all about making something in terms of a business more valuable over time, focusing on durability, transferability, and it's really focused on defensibility of decay of equity. because the reality is businesses are always in decay. And just because a business is generating a lot of revenue, if it's generating a lot of revenue in the wrong way, does not automatically translate to equity being created in value and value captured, right? Same goes for a business that's been around for a long period of time. Just because a business has been around for a long period of time doesn't mean that the equity is not in decay and that it's not becoming obsolete in terms of technology and process and improvements that need to take place to stay ahead of the curve for the next 25 years, right? So equity is always in decay. And the practice that is, or the profession that is long-term equity management, is professionally designed to defend against that decay. And in moments of time like this great pivot, it is a perfectly positioned role to identify the changes and support the transformation that needs to take place, again, as this bridge in this great divide. An example of what I mean, because this is an abstract thought, because again, folks think more revenue is better in terms of equity being built for a ownable, durable, valuable business. But like, let's use Sally Sue because we use her all the time in the books and other examples. Sally Sue runs Sally Sue's lemonade stand. Sally Sue shows up and she generates $100 in revenue from her lemonade stand. But the days that she does not show up, she generates $0. That's a less valuable asset than if Sally Sue was able to productize and systematize and build a durable business that was transferable in terms of her work and effort into somebody else's to create leverage in the asset that she owns, where the days that she's not showing up, she's generating not just revenue, but also profitable revenue from the ownership of that asset, achieving operational optionality, right? That's a more valuable thing than just revenue alone, right? So revenue does not always translate to equity is what we're saying. Same goes for something that, is valuable and has been valuable or producing revenue and profit for a long period of time. Just because it has been doesn't mean that it's defensible against the future. And if that changes, then the equity will degrade, right? So equity is in a constant state of decay. And the job of a long-term equity manager is to defend against that decay, which is why it's an absolutely perfect vehicle to help support this transition. And what we're working on and what we're designing is a fellowship program that helps support more folks get into this profession of long-term equity management. When we look at this fellowship, we're trying to identify the fact that there's people who will be displaced and there's people who will be safe. And the goal is to take folks that are going to be displaced and help them shift into a new profession and a new career that supports, enables, and empowers the transition of those who are safe in this great pivot. And we think that there's an opportunity to help repurpose the workforce and help create roles that, adopt and leverage this timeless service of long-term equity management, but in an AI proof and AI facing manner to help SMBs. Because again, that's the market we're focusing on. We're focusing on the folks that don't have necessarily access to all of the resources and kind of really need the most help navigating this pivot. So if we can repurpose the workforce to be able to help support SMBs that need to go through this transition, to us, that's an opportunity to create a tremendous amount of value. And that's the goal of business, is to solve other people's problems and do so in a valuable way. And if we're following the money and we're trying to understand the market and we're trying to understand this new AI economy, then essentially we need to understand the way that the market's working, right? So we're going to have SMBs, we're going to have workers. Everyone at the end of the day needs to get retooled. You look at the other players in the market, which I started this entire conversation with. You have, large corporations and enterprises. You have financial partners and sponsors, right? Everyone's kind of playing nice in the sandbox. The real reality is like large corporations, they're going to have budget to be able to retool and repurpose. And when you're talking about a per individual enterprise versus a per individual SMB, small business, it's a disproportionate amount of resources to be able to figure this thing out. And in big moments of time of change, there's a lot to figure out. And it's not easy and it's not going to be simple necessarily. And resources do help. So what do we do for the SMB that doesn't have the resources necessarily? They don't have the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to dump into solving this problem. What we want to do is collectively be able to find, resource, and repurpose resources to be able to help support the transition of this change through our fellowship program. So we want to work with sponsors. Sponsors are going to be like AI forward-facing companies, so folks that are kind of like a part of creating this problem in the first place, AI native, like people that are literally building businesses that are disrupting and driving this change. We want to partner with capital partners who kind of need to fund the future of this AI economy, and they want to participate in it, and they want to be able to have a stake in it, and they want to be able to help drive it and facilitate it because it's an important function, in this overall ecosystem. We want to work with corporations that potentially want to be able to, leverage and learn insights at scale, and then also, be able to pay it forward and help facilitate. And we want to funnel resources at scale into a core program that is then designed to help repurpose the workforce that is probably being either displaced by these AI first companies or displaced from these corporations, and help retool that workforce as well as SMBs of the same to essentially become, a new career, a new path, a new role forward in terms of AI economy job creation that can then support SMBs that are more resource constrained to navigate through this great pivot, right? So we essentially want to create a win-win-win economic disruption opportunity, for everybody. So this becomes a shared transition problem, right? The market at whole needs to be able to acknowledge this. And then as a whole, all together, we need to play nice in the sandbox. And we just need to build the bridge that helps us, shift towards real ownership, right? So that's what we want to do in terms of our fellowship program. That's the problems that we're trying to solve. That's why, ultimately we believe that there's problems to actually be solving here. And if you feel like, at any moment in time, any of this conversation kind of resonated for you, and you feel like maybe you are, a employee who may be displaced, maybe you are an SMB that may be displaced, we want you to join the fellowship program, and we want you to learn a new occupation. And if you're an SMB that you need to be able to navigate through this transition, and it's going to take a lot of effort, time, energy, resources to be able to figure it out, and you want some help, and you want some support, and you want to pull in a lot of other people's resources to be able to help facilitate your own and make it a little bit easier, a little bit simpler, then if you're either one of those buckets, then there's something that's already been built in terms of a bridge for you to act on. And that's this fellowship program that we are running and rolling out at bootstrapper.ai, right? Where we believe genuinely that AI is changing everything and your business doesn't have to lose. And if you're in a situation where you may be displaced, right, then you become a service provider that helps the rest of us navigate through these moments of time, and you repurpose into an AI-proof business in terms of long-term equity management and advisory. So we have a fellowship program. If you come to the site, bootstrapper.ai, you can apply to fellowship, right? There's two different options, whether it's a ownable fellowship, which are for SMBs that need to transition through this moment in time pivot, this great pivot, or if it's the exited fellowship for folks that are quite literally being displaced, exiting out of the current roles and need to repurpose and retool, right? We have fellowship programs for both, and they're being supported by our partners at large. And our job is to be able to acquire as many folks that are a part of this transition, this great pivot moment in time, and help roll through this program built through our infrastructure as Rails so that folks can get the structure, strategies, accountabilities to be able to navigate this moment in time successfully. If you're going through this and this is something that you are trying to figure out and wrap your head around, we also put together this resource. It's 10 pages, right? You can get it. We'll link to it below. It's going to be available on the library of bootstrapper.ai as well. It helps you just ask and prompts a couple of questions that ties into the narrative of what we covered today so that you can kind of self-select and make a good timely decision, pattern recognition of kind of the actions that you should probably take, right? So the real reality is no matter what, like this thing is happening, the old way is breaking and there's something new coming. And it's a moment in time where you kind of need to decide like where you stand, right? And are you going to ultimately become ownership poor because of lack of action? Or can you put yourself proactively into the position, best possible position to become ownership rich in this new AI economy because you take the right types of timely decisions and take proactive actions today? If you want to take those actions, then join us in our fellowship program. Till next time, trust the process, commit to the journey.
If I could do it all again.
Struggling business? It's time to exit with ownership. Join the Exit Studio. Build equity. Unlock capital. Exit with ownership. Keep it simple.
I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to rise up just so they could see me. Did what I had to do just to feed me. And what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be fucking sour, take a cold shower. Scream until you're louder, work until you're prouder. And all the doubters.
You gotta have that grit, that hustle to make it in this city. Never give up.